This presentation is about winning SBIR awards, and we have with us today Heath Knockin and Larry Peterson of the Texas Foundation for Innovative Communities, and they're going to lead us through the SBIR world, what SBIRs are, and an upcoming conference they have that you can participate in to learn more about it. So with that, let me pass it over and have Heath Knockin kick off our presentation along with Larry Peterson. Heath, Larry?
Well, thanks, everyone. This is Larry Peterson. I'm Executive Director of the Texas Foundation for Innovative Communities. I am a serial entrepreneur, and the Texas Foundation for Innovative Communities builds on the work of George Kosmetsky, who also founded IC2, where Heath is, and we'll be talking about that a little bit today. Heath, introduce yourself.
Yes, thank you, Larry. My name is Heath Knockin. I work over at the IC2 Institute. Many of you may or may not be familiar with IC2. Most of you in the area would be familiar with the Austin Technology Incubator, which is a part of IC2. Me personally, in relationship to SBIR work, I have worked heavily in the SBIR field, particularly with the National Science Foundation, NIH, and the EPA. As a reviewer for SBIR program applications for phase 1 and phase 2 for the last 5 years, hopefully I can get a good perspective to you guys about what the program is in general and some how it can benefit you as small businesses.
So the Texas Foundation for Innovative Communities is a nonprofit funded largely by the Office of the Governor. We are a nonpartisan group focused on accelerating economic growth. The best way to accelerate economic growth is to build innovative young companies, hopefully like the kind of companies y'all are interested in building. So we're going to talk about some of our resources to build your companies. And as part of that, the federal SBIR STTR program, the Texas SBIR Network, and the SBIR STTR Summit coming up next week on June 12th. So Heath, if you would go to the next slide. So, as I mentioned, we're focused on the development of globally competitive industry, higher wages, jobs growth, tax base, and investment. One of those parts is growing Texas innovative capacity and helping young companies find R&D money. SBIR STTR is one major target area. In particular, we have promised to triple Texas SBIR attainment from about 80 million to 240 million. In the longer term, we hope to greatly increase Texas research base as well. Next.
And I guess I'll take over this point, Larry. So what we want to do is give you, some of you may have seen or be very, very aware of SBIR programs in general. Some of you may not be. I'll do a quick overview of what the SBIR STTR program is, and we'll sort of go into that and then get into some more specifics later on in this webinar. The first thing is SBIR is Small Business Innovative Research. STTR is Small Business Tech Transfer. These programs were established in the 80s, shortly after the Bayh-Dole Act, which many of you may have heard of, especially those of you dealing with patents and IP. And as it says in these slides, basically 3%, 2.5 to 3% of total extramural research budgets for all 11 major federal agencies at that time in 82 were supposed to be allocated to small business. So the list of agencies on the right-hand side are the ones that actively participated in the SBIR and STTR program. And I'll give you guys one more distinction that's not on the slide. 2.5% is allocated towards SBIR. Another 0.5%, making the 3% total, is STTR. The difference between the two is SBIR is small company specific. STTR requires at least 30% involvement of a university entity in the proposed program. So in practice, while they're lumped together, they're separate programs, if you will. So SBIR, STTR programs, whichever one they are divided typically into 3 different phases, and we're sort of grouping it all together, especially the monies, because they vary by agency, although they're pretty standard. Time frames are pretty standard as well, so there is some difference between agencies, but these are good rules of thumb. Phase 1 is the first step into the SBIR mix. Whether you're NSF, NIH, what have you, that is always about establishing technical merit and feasibility for the technology, and typically very research-focused. You still need to prove that there's commercial potential for what it is you're working on. Normally, these Phase 1 awards do not exceed $150,000 in amount, and normally they do not last longer than 6 months. You can apply for a 6-month extension. I know at the NSF, they will let you complete the project within 6 months or 1 year with no penalty, but regardless, the money doesn't change. To get to Phase 2, you have to have a Phase 1 award. There's no way to go straight to Phase 2. Phase 2 awards are very focused on commercialization of the technology under development and really ramping up and getting that technology from the breadboard, if you will, the Frankenstein you may be developing in your lab, to actual ready to produce, ready to manufacture. Typically, these awards will run for 2 years in time. The normal award amount ranges from about $750,000 to $1.5, so we give an aggregate of about $1 million for those 2 years of effort. There is officially a Phase 3, but these do not come with funding. This is very focused where the agencies try and pair their Phase 2 recipients with interested industry partners who have expressed an interest in matchmaking, and this is handled at the federal agency level. This may involve follow-on contracts. The DoD is very big on after Phase 2 and after you prove up what you have, offering what they call, they don't call it Phase 3, but they will actually purchase a number of the products that you have developed for the last 2.5 years. So here's sort of the standard amounts that go into the buckets, if you will. This was from 2009. This has changed somewhat, and I know that, for instance, the NSF dollars are higher than what is reported here as far as what goes into SBIR and STTR. NASA's probably gone down a little bit. So, again, general guideline. But all the agencies, when you look at them, DoD, Health and Human Services, NASA, DOE, NSF, those are the pool of money that's allocated towards SBIR on the left-hand side, and the STTR, which, remember, requires a university participation, is on the right-hand side of the column. Obviously, the SBIR money has SBIR pot is larger, but in total, you're still looking at about $2.5 billion worth of funding to small business for research and development. So, as I mentioned previously, potential steps. These, you have to get Phase 1 to get to Phase 2, and for the Phase 3 matchmaking and follow-on contracts, you need to get through the Phase 2 effort successfully and show that you've been successful in developing what you say you're going to do. So what are the requirements for eligibility? First, you have to be a for-profit business based in the United States. They use, to determine who's a small business and who isn't, they use the SBA guideline, which is 500 employees or less. The PI's employment must be with a small business. This gets really touchy, especially when you're dealing with university faculty who may be the inventor. But this can be done because you're talking about primary place of employment for the PI must be within the small business during the period of the award. So you can play, or not play, but work with requirements. And here's a big one. You must be at least 51% U.S. owned by individuals independently operated, or 51% owned and controlled by another for-profit business concern that is at least 51% owned and controlled. This is receiving increased attention lately. They're still playing with the rules on whether venture capital owned firms or angel, those with significant equity stakes in angel groups, they can qualify, but they're still looking at how the equity portion gets counted, so to speak. But generally, 51% U.S. owned. So here's a few more guidelines that we've covered over the course of this thus far, but I want to point you to the second bullet, which requires formal cooperative research and development effort. For the STTR program, it has to be led by the small business. At least 40% of the research and development must be done by the small business itself, and at least 30% by the U.S. research institution that is partnered with the small business. Now, a research institution must be a college or university, a federally recognized nonprofit research organization, or a federal research and development. Often these would be your national labs that fulfill this role. There is an intellectual property agreement that must be put in place between the research institution and the small business. Often this is in the form of a licensing agreement, but it should be in place, and it certainly will be reviewed. And there should be a commitment between the two for follow-on R&D and commercialization effort together on whatever project is being funded through the STTR program at that time. So many of you may be wondering what kind of things are funded. Agencies handle this very differently. DOD may say we want a new novel wound care technology and be very specific about what they want that to be. Others, like the NSF, are very open-ended, where they will say, please tell me, give me your best ideas in smart healthcare. But regardless of it, they will issue a solicitation of every cycle, and it depends. NSF runs it twice a year for phase 1, NIH and a few others run it 3 times per year. But they will issue a solicitation conference, these that are qualified for SBIR, STTR work, that cycle. Then there is the small business would prepare a small proposal, usually no more than 25 pages, and in practice, you're filling in a lot of governmental forms, a lot of fill in the blanks, so they end up being something paper for phase 1, but as far as actual work, 15 to 25 is a good rule of thumb. There are no unsolicited proposals on this. You can't just have a good idea. It must fit within a solicitation topic. And after the proposal is submitted, they are evaluated. Now, this is important to recognize, is that the agencies don't just blindly determine what's good and what's not. They assemble panels of reviewers that go to D.C. or other places and will sit in a panel to determine which ones should or should not move forward for funding.
Heath, are you on a cell phone?
No, I am not. I am direct on my computer.
Okay, you're getting a lot of echo feedback there. Is there a way to cut that out? I don't know, but a lot of issues here coming up with the audio. Let me try muting you. Go ahead and try now, Heath. Now try it, Heath.
Can you hear?
Yeah, you're still echoing.
Is that better?
No, it's the same. Well, let's go ahead and finish out the slides, and then while we're doing Q&A, perhaps you can dial in on a standard phone or a Skype headset and see if that cuts out the echo. But we've got a lot of echo here for some reason.
If you would like, I'm glad to try and dial in quickly to make sure that goes easier. Give me one moment.
Okay.
Apologies for the delay, everyone. Well,
Go ahead, Heath. Say.
I don't know that that's working right this moment.
Yeah, we're still getting a lot of echo on it. Okay, let's go ahead and finish out. Go ahead, Heath. Let's do the best we can.
All right. Let me try one more time, sir. Just make sure it's trying to make it a little bit better for everyone. Hello? Hello, can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me? Is that better?
Yeah, that's better. Go ahead and pick up at the beginning of this slide and carry on through.
All right, we'll do. All right, apologies for the delay. So at the beginning of this slide, we talked before the interruption, I was describing that all agencies have a specific set of solicitations that they issue once or in between 1 and 3 times per year, depending on the agency. But they will have specific topics that they will say qualify for SBIR, STTR type grants. A proposal needs to be submitted. That's usually between 15 and 25 pages, no more, of a small business concern, to the agency. The proposals are evaluated by external reviewers, and this is the part I was getting into before we had stopped for a minute. The evaluation is conducted by, so for instance, in the National Science Foundation, they will pull together around 8 reviewers to review somewhere between 12 and 16 proposals for phase 1. These reviewers will come from both technical, meaning they have competency in, say, nanotechnology, and are established researchers in that field, as well as commercial background, meaning they have small business that has been successful or failed in this field before. And those will review the proposals for both commercial and technical merit, and then make the determination of whether it should be awarded phase 1 awards or not. The same process is carried forward for phase 2 as well, with a slight more emphasis on commercial potential at that point. I don't know that we specifically talk about the percentage award rate, but what I will say is that in general, the award ratio for phase 1 is somewhere between 15 and 25% of those submitted get awarded, although that has been higher with some assistance in the past. So why does the government do this? One, we're supposed to help small business, or the government's supposed to help small business, but first, this creates a low-cost technology approach. This allows the government to put their funds towards a lot of different areas and really see what bubbles up. What are the best things that they find that are innovative and can help solve some of the government's challenges across agencies. It can also help identify those things that maybe shouldn't be pursued before the government starts a $30 million national laboratory to focus on that area. This provides for quick reaction capabilities, especially with groups like the NIH and DoD. Some of the topics you will see are for quick reaction to vaccine production or virus testing or military-specific
needs that help enable the U.S. government agencies to react more quickly to those concerns that they have. And this helps diversify the government supplier base, meaning all these small businesses and the ones that start performing well are now added to the roster so that the government is aware of what the capabilities of those firms are, and quite often, especially with Department of Defense, NIH, and those that do a lot of small business contracting, those small businesses that succeed in the SBIR world go on to become small business contractors and providers. So why should companies be interested in this? It seems like a lot of hoops to potentially go through to get some money. But first, this helps provide first money. It can help you get nascent projects started. Those of you who are at universities can utilize this money to help start your small business, even though the business hasn't been started yet. The requirement is that it has to be started at the time of award, not at the time of application. Most important, this is a grant. There is no dilution of ownership. The government does not take a piece. There is no, in exchange for this $150,000 or $1 million, a 40% equity exchange or something like that. No repayment is required, and you retain all IP. The government does have a royalty-free limited use license in effect for anything that was created with their funds, but besides that, you retain all rights in the IP developed. And increasingly, with the way that the private equity markets are shifting, SBIR funds are sort of becoming the first mark in many places of whether something is technically interesting enough to attract further investment. So I think I've covered most of those, but really it is ultimately it's free money that all small businesses are able to get if they have something technically interesting and that can help solve the need. So let's talk about some impacts briefly. So company creation, 20% of respondents said that they were founded as part of a prospective SBIR award. These are in small business areas. Often the SBIR awards will play a key role in decisions to pursue a research project. This is especially at the University of Texas and other major institutions. You'll see that SBIRs will allow those faculty to sort of explore something outside of the norm, but something that they're passionate about. And SBIR tends to focus on those things that are high impact and high need and not in the quote-unquote norm. Those who get past phase 2 or get to phase 2 will often find that they are able to actually grow with this money because it's non-dilutive, but there's no encumbrances, and it's supposed to be towards that money from the NSF or DOD or NIH is supposed to be for technical development, so you can hire technical staff and those folks that can help you develop your product further. And it does lead to increased partnerships with groups because ultimately you're talking about federal agencies and research funding. That leads to academia and national laboratories and federal consortia being more interested in those SBIR recipients and winners. Let's see what's happening here. So furthermore, there's an increased interest in the private equity markets on SBIR funding as sort of an indicator that the firms are developing further. So angel investors, have interest, and venture capital has interest. Now, I'll tell you, you don't say it in the slides, but I'll tell you why. Because in all the SBIR awards, phase 1 or phase 2, there is a sub-award called 1B or 2B. And I'll give you an example of how this could work with venture capital or angel investment. You get the phase 1 award. That is a non-diluted grant from the National Science Foundation for $150,000. They will allow you to apply for a 1B award that does not require additional technical work or anything. This requires external investment that you can demonstrate. So say an angel comes in and says, I will give you $60,000 of early angel money since you got this NSF Phase 1 award. The NSF will match that. So they will give you 50 cents for every dollar you bring in, up to $30,000 in Phase 1 for the 1B. That's not so interesting. But when you get to Phase 2, this really ramps up. So they will match up to another $1 million in the 2B period for if you can attract up to $2 million. So all of a sudden you're looking at a significant amount of money that is non-dilutable, that can really augment the angel or venture capital funding in your firm. And there's numerous cases of acquisition of SBIR firms, i.e. Optiva, which we listed here, but there's certainly far more than that. So hopefully this gives you a good overview of the SBIR program in general and maybe a couple new tidbits that you weren't aware of before. And with that, I will turn it over to Larry. Larry?
Thanks, Heath. I see. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah, I hear you fine. Go ahead, Larry.
Well, great. Okay. So our foundation is funded by the state to ensure that Texas gets its share of SBIR funding, since it is such a valuable part of the funding puzzle in terms of ensuring high growth, high innovation companies get off the ground. But as you see from this slide, startup funding in Texas is, in terms of our national share, has not been doing well. We recently dropped from number 3 to number 8 in terms of the venture capital we receive on a multi-state regional basis. So Texas counts as its own region, so we dropped to 8th behind a lot of our competitor regions. We certainly want to reverse that. Let's go on the next slide. As you can see, we've been gradually increasing our SBIR numbers. In 2011, we got about $80 million, but still, relative to our peer states, it's quite a bit less than we should get. Let's go on to the next slide. As you can see in this pie chart, there are two big slices, California and Massachusetts, that account for almost a third of all of the SBIR awards by themselves. Well, almost exactly a third. So as you can see, the top handful of states are almost half. So, whereas Texas in there, we rank number 7th overall, but when you adjust per capita, our performance were around 34th. So that's not near where a state like Texas thinks it should be. Let's go on. So part of our effort to triple this is bringing in a large network of state partners and implementing some specific programs. Amongst other programs, we manage the Texas Association of Research Parks and Incubators, which encompasses most of the venture development organizations in the state. We also are a partner in running the soon-to-be reestablished Austin RCIC for the Emerging Tech Fund, and also the Panhandle West Texas RCIC. And we'll be talking about some of our SBIR programs attached to ETF in a minute. So how do we build Texas SBIR STTR attainment? Generally speaking, we have to make sure that there's more proposals. We need to make sure that our entrepreneurs know more how to craft a quality proposal, that they're more aware of the sources of funding, that they are connecting with the people and resources that they need to. And then, once those proposals are at least in some stage of development, what we can do to help them divert from maybe a marginal or a proposal that definitely would not get funded into one that will. So we have a couple of parts to that between ourselves and our network across the state. So the first is regional workshops, and those are done for this year. We ran them around Texas during April and brought in a nationally recognized facilitator that helped companies win over 300 SBIR awards, and it helped 12 states develop their programs. We have a summit, which we'll talk about in a minute, because it is coming up next week and is a key resource for anyone thinking of submitting an SBIR proposal in the next year. And the Texas SBIR STTR Resource Network which we'll also talk about a little bit more. But generally, just to summarize here, it's a set of free and low-cost tools to ensure success. So beyond the events that we have, this is where a lot of the real horsepower comes from, providing light administrative reviews and proposal assessments, resource identification referrals, introductions to key resources like program managers in Washington, and low-cost, in-depth mentoring from a network of experienced SBIR reviewers statewide. Essentially, the kind of services that a quality consultant would provide, but about 5 to 10% of the cost. So our client, of course, is the state, and the state wants to grow its attainment. So, we succeed only by helping all of the applicants that have some strong technology succeed. So let's go on the next. Steve? Okay. No problem. So coming up next week is the Texas SBIR STTR Summit and Conference. It's patterned after the National SBIR Conference, and conference is kind of a misnomer, so we really refer to it as the summit. We really try to put all of the tools under one roof that someone needs to go from being slightly knowledgeable about the SBIR program to crafting a winning proposal. And part of that is building relationships, building teams, building resources and capabilities. So next week, June 12th, Wednesday, in Austin at the AT&T Executive Education Center, we'll have about 200 attendees, welcomed by U.S. Rep. Lamar Smith, who you may know as chairman of the U.S. House Committee on Space Science and Technology. We will have a keynote by the Emerging Technology Fund Advisory Chair, Terry Chase Hazel, to talk for the first time about the planned SBIR STTR matching program, which the state will hope to match dollar for dollar SBIR awards into Texas up to $500,000, and a keynote by Dr. John Fisher, Director of Defense Laboratories Enterprise, who runs all of the Army national labs, and we'll talk about their capabilities in connecting with Texas entrepreneurs. Let's go on the next one. So the summit will have a number of tutorials, but mostly it's advanced stuff. There is some introductory tutorials. There's an SBIR 101 session for folks that are attending that did not attend the workshops. There's some modules on startup financing, government accounting, entrepreneurship for faculty. But there's also some very advanced tutorials, IP protection and negotiating data rights, working with federal partners, generating what are called cooperative research and development agreements, CRADAs. But also there'll be program updates for all major SBIR granting agencies, the 5 big ones plus the Department of Homeland Security, which is the next one. So it's the 6th largest of the 11 agencies. The others are quite small. There'll be presentations by investors, research institutions, peer mentors, incubators, TMAC, small business development centers, and many other resources. And the best part of that is you can meet with every single one of those one-on-one. Next slide. So the structured networking means that every single speaker, about 40 in all, are available to meet with you. So all you have to do is sign up for any 15-minute block, and you can develop the relationship. One of those absolutely key things, and one of the things Texas companies miss quite a bit, as Heath had mentioned, a lot of these SBIR solicitations are fairly narrow. They're both the proposal-driven and the solicitation-driven. So some are pretty broad and open, and some are fairly narrow and detailed. Particularly ones that are contract-driven. You'll never find a solicitation that matches your core expertise unless you get to meet with and get to know your program manager. So this is a key opportunity to meet one-on-one with them. Now, because of the sequester, a lot of folks are not do not have travel money, but we have Skype sessions available with any resource that is not there. But an awful lot of the folks there will be there on the ground. So next. Let's talk about the matching program for a little bit. This is a planned program of the Texas Emerging Technology Fund based in large part on the Kentucky program. They have, I would say it's officially in the investigatory phase. So they have a subcommittee of the larger committee of 17, 4-person subcommittee, exploring how to actually structure this. But they're looking at potential match for phase 1, phase 2, phase 1.5, phase 2.5, up to a cap of $500,000. There's some discussion of how to provide phase 0 grants. In other words, what assistance might be provided for getting the grant, a quality grant proposal developed in the first place. But if you put that together with the SBIR, you have a total potential of $1.5 million non-dilutive funding. You know, what would normally be considered an entire A round. You know, in California in particular, entrepreneurs almost always go for an SBIR grant before they attempt to raise money from angels or VCs because it's non-dilutive. They don't have to give up a share of stock. So it's a very desirable source of funding, and with the match, you know, even more so. So next. Okay, so we just want to mention that, whoops, we have a date wrong up there. It's June 12th, not April 8th. I think that was left over from this is a slide from the old slide deck, but basically we have 40 partners from across the state, all of the Texas Association of Research Parks and Incubators members, most of the public universities in Texas, most of the private universities in Texas, the small business development centers, you know, most anyone that is in the business of venture development, and working very closely with TMAC and the Texas MSTC program. There are 2 major sponsor partners on this. So it's a great program. We are going to grow for Texas. If you have a technology that is of interest to the federal government, you know, we can probably put you on the path to get funding for this. We have assembled a set of resources that can take anyone that can build a halfway decent proposal and boost them over the wall to success. So hope that anyone interested in pursuing that connects with us, and we'd like to assist you. So I guess with that, we can open it up for some questions.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Heath. There's a chat box in the lower right of your screen. If you can type your questions in, we'll ask those and have Larry and Heath answer them. So the first question is, what is the cost of the workshop?
Yeah, and unfortunately this last slide has the wrong link there. The workshop for everyone that is connected to Wilco is 50% off the regular price of $199. So there is a code to, I probably need to provide everyone the correct web link here too. There's a code that is 2013 PRTNR, and maybe Heath Hall, do you have everyone's email that is attending today that you can send that out to?
Yes, if you send me the link and the date and the code, I'll email that to everybody today.
Yeah, I think may have had that from Floyd, but I'll have everyone, I'll have him resend that in just a moment here.
All right. What other questions do we have? Okay, can you go back to the first slide, please?
The very first one?
Or the second one. I think there was some audio issues, so people were asking about some of the concepts did not come through. Let's go to the next slide.
Is that it?
No, I think it's the next slide after this. Here we go.
Here we go.
Which groups are
Which groups are
have the most provide the most SBIR grants?
provide the most SBIR grants?
Which departments?
In total
now?
Yes.
I would say it's,
that
let me actually forward to another slide.
Yeah, there's
Okay, so this
some.
next slide
The next slide
shows who typically the EOD,
EOD,
the National Institute of Health, those are both quite large.
Okay.
Right behind that is NASA, DOE, and the National Science Foundation.
Yeah. Your echo is back, Heath.
I know, I can hear it.
Okay. Next question is, the panel review said we need to revise our commercial plan. Are there any resources or website to prepare the commercial plan in phase one?
I can attempt to answer that. Larry, is your phone on as well?
Is my audio okay, Hall, or
Yes,
is
it
it
is.
having problems? Okay.
It's just mine. Okay. I will try and answer the question. As I understand, you were asking that you had a review, saying that you had to address commercial potential. Is that right?
That's right.
So increasingly, and this has changed over the last 5 years. When I first started doing phase one review, it was very technically focused. But what has happened is that just was, you were getting a lot of proposals for technical work that was not commercially viable. So now, even in phase one, you need to address things like the team, IP, what's the size of the market, and at least basic commercialization topics in the phase one submission these days.
Okay. The next question is STTR much harder to get compared to SBIR?
It's much smaller than that.
Is the STT harder to get than SBIRs?
It's not harder, but you must have a university partner.
I see.
In
Okay.
some ways, it's actually easier because fewer people submit to STTR than SBI. I'll give an example. At the National Science Foundation, last solicitation period, for phase one SBIR, they had somewhere around, I want to say 600 applications for that one cycle. For FTTR, they had about 70. So while the pool of money is much smaller, the pool of competition is much smaller as well. At least that's what I've seen.
Okay. What stage does a company have to be in to participate in an SBIR STTR? Pre-revenue, 100K revenue, what is that?
Doesn't matter. I mean, I've seen people win awards that are certainly pre-revenue. Some even aren't officially incorporated yet, although I do not advise that. But, you know, pre-revenue is very typical. Those that have revenue, it's good. But, and of course, the more developed you are, the better. But, yeah, it does not really matter the phase you're in. It's more about at this point, it's more about whether what you're developing is potentially high impact and whether it's needed and it fulfills the solicitation requirements while showing commercial viability.
Okay.
And if you're an established company, you can make that work.
All right. For the SBIR grant, the government retains royalty-free use. Does this mean they can use our proposed IP to build upon the technology without providing the company any revenue?
So this is often a concern. This is usually a concern at universities too, because technically anything that has research funding from the government must provide a royalty-free license to the government because it's used with government funds. I will give you a couple of examples. Technically, if they wanted to, they could swoop in and take the IP or utilize the IP to build that technology in-house. They are prohibited from taking that IP and giving it to, say, a larger company like Raytheon to build it for you. That's, taking yours and giving it to somebody else. It needs to be for exclusive internal government use. The government doesn't really manufacture, first of all. But, I guess they can, but it's not in the business of that. Secondly, with agencies like the National Science Foundation especially, and some of the other agencies listed, they have no interest whatsoever in doing anything with the IP, and never have they, in 30-something years, have they ever taken a license back. So there's often a concern, they can just come in and take it, but I believe I have never heard of an example where that actually occurred. Now, I'm sure it could have, but I just don't think it has ever happened. And I know with groups like the DoD and NASA, they don't want to be building things. They want to find people that are smart, businesses that are agile, that can use the building and do the manufacture for them. So.
Okay. Could you give some examples of some of the awards that have been given that have been rather small-scale entrepreneurial efforts?
I can't speak about, I can talk about just the ones I'm aware of, but I'll give an example of one company I've worked with. I'm not going to mention it by name, but they got an NIH Phase 1 award, and this is three guys that are part-time faculty at 3 different institutions that decided to get together and work on a healthcare device. They had to build a couple different things, so they worked on some smart sensor type thing, and again, I'm being vague for a reason, but got $150,000 from the National Institute of Health in a Phase 1. Got another Phase 1 for a different component of research, which led to a Phase 2 with the NIH. And now they're applying for NSF Phase 1 for sort of the whole picture together in smart healthcare. So they have used this NIH money and NSF money to essentially raise somewhere to date of around $750,000, actually more than that, about $1.25 million, all in grant money. They're completely non-diluted. It's still 3 guys with a few, at this point they've hired a few technical program full-time underneath of them, but it's technically 3 guys just running the company. And they actually have about, in about 3 years, they built up about $600,000 in revenue from those products that they're selling before it was even done. Because the NIH liked it. They gave them another contract to purchase some of these monitors, and then it led into other things. So I don't know if that's exactly the example you're looking for, but perhaps it could show how a small group of people can get together, create a company that's very small with no real revenue, just some competency, and utilize these to be commercially successful.
Right.
And to go from 0 to $600,000 a year revenue, without losing any equity and having control and, building something that means something. Yeah.
Next question is, will we make the presentation available for download? Yes, I've recorded it. We'll upload it to YouTube, and I'll send a link along with the updated registration link and codes later today for you guys to use. Are there any other questions before we close it out? We have just a couple of minutes more. I think that's it for now, guys. Let me go ahead and close it out. Thank you, Larry and Heath. Appreciate your spending time with us today. And we will put this information out to all the audience members today. Thank you guys for spending your hour with us this afternoon. I hope you found it interesting and useful information. I certainly did. And we'll see you next time. With that, we'll go and close it out, and thank everybody for their time.
Thank you.
Thanks.